Hey everybody, Professor Snart checking in here as we get into week 3 of our very quick online English 1102 course. So about midweek of this week is basically midterm for us, which is hard to believe. And it may feel, and I've kind of mentioned this before, but it's worth maybe reiterating, it may feel like we've done not so much not very much, but like little tiny pieces of various things. And again, the whole kind of design of the course is to work us through, and you sort of get a sense from the units of this, is to work us through some of those smaller pieces, like conceptual pieces or smaller kind of exercise type things, before we get to putting them all together in this first essay that we're doing, which is actually what I'm going to talk about really for the bulk of this, or towards the end of this, this announcement. Partly because despite the fact that we're a couple of units away from that, you'll notice that because of our compressed time frame, that first unit is actually due here Monday, June 15th. And you certainly wouldn't want probably to wait until like after you've finished up things on Wednesday to start like thinking about this essay or thinking towards it. Not that you'd want to start it like now necessarily, but it shouldn't sort of surprise you to look at our list of things to do on Thursday and think, oh, in a couple of days, including the weekend, right, you have your first essay due, which is, again, a much bigger point value. It's graded much more kind of systematically as far as me looking for the application of concepts and basic skills that we've covered, whether it's like managing general and specific, using MLA citation correctly, introducing quotations. Again, all of the little pieces that we've kind of covered individually up until that point. So I would certainly recommend like taking a look at the assignment now, basically, so that you can kind of get your mind working in that direction, even as we work through these other things. And truthfully, one of the things that you'll hopefully notice is that you can be obviously like working on, let's say, Unit 6 and completing the specific work for that, but you can see its application to the first essay. So it's not like you have to be sort of keeping two things in mind at the same time or multiple things in mind, since they really are all kind of working towards that first essay. So it's Monday as I record this, so many people have finished or are just finishing up Unit 5. So I'll take a quick look at Unit 6 for us then. Unit 6 in many ways is kind of the last piece of the puzzle in terms of things that we'll be doing for the first essay. You'll notice that there's a little midterm survey just kind of asking about how things are going so far. It's anonymous and ungraded, but I certainly like to get the feedback. Both for things that have been challenging, if there are any. I hope they're not, obviously, but also for things that work. So I like to hear when things are good, because then I can make sure that I duplicate that for future versions of this course, but also any of the other online courses that I teach as well. Okay, so pretty straightforward objective here. So English 1102 is sometimes called the research course. Now, we happen to write essays about literature, but they're still fundamentally research essays. We have the short story or whatever text you're reading, which is the primary text. And then we also have secondary sources, or what are sometimes called critical sources, although that's a misleading term, since they're not necessarily negative about the thing. But you know, that's the research part, which is what we cover in this unit here. So that aspect of 1102 is really, really important. It seems, it can seem really kind of nitpicky, like where the comma goes or where the period goes, how the citation works and all that kind of stuff. And it is, but it's important to get it right. Now, a typo here and there is not going to kill you, but if you don't have a fundamental grasp of like how to cite a source, how to put a works cited together, then that's really going to impact your grade in 1102, because again, it's like the research course. It's also something, unlike maybe a few of the other things we cover, that's it's black and white objective. It's either right or wrong. It follows the examples or it doesn't. And again, I would never expect you to necessarily memorize the formatting for an ML or a works cited page or something like that. You just follow the models, and there's lots in our course, right? You can go to the MLA citation page. There's stuff in this unit here. So in some ways, it's like it has a significant impact on your grade, which can feel like a glass half empty kind of a situation, but really, because you're just following models that are already provided in our course here, I like to sort of hope that you think of it as a glass half full situation. I mean, it's worth points, a lot of points, but it's really easy to do because, again, there's no mystery to it. You're just following the examples. And of course, if you have questions, you can, be in touch with me. So anyway, there's a couple of readings, a couple of short stories from our book that will probably form the basis of what you write on for essay number 1. These and Alice Munro's Boys and Girls from the previous unit. Those are really the good ones to choose from. And then the assignment, there's a lot of text to read here, but it's actually pretty straightforward. So we're looking for a secondary source, about one of these short stories. So we're always going to use, for our secondary sources, COD library databases. If you have access to another library's database system, I mean, you could probably do that too, but it's easiest just to use the COD ones. That way I know that they're legit and you're doing it the way that we want to do it here for our course. So we're never in an essay just going to Google something, whether it's credible or not, like it could be from the New York Times or Wikipedia or whatever. That's just not the kind of research that we're doing. So if you end up doing that, that's a big red flag for me that you're just like not really paying attention to our course. You're certainly not listening and paying attention to this video, for example. So again, a significant impact on your grade. So we always want to use database sources that are appropriate, or sources that are appropriate, which for our purposes is going to be the databases. There's a couple that are listed in the unit here that are really good, so I'll just direct your attention to those. They're kind of off the screen to my right here, but you'll see them in the unit itself. So that means it's appropriate. You've used the right kind of source. The other thing we're concerned with is that it's relevant. So for us, that means a secondary source is a direct discussion of one of the short stories or the primary text that you're talking about. In other words, if you decide to write your essay on Alice Munro's Boys and Girls, you would find in one of the databases, one of the literature databases, a discussion of that particular short story, not something from your textbook on childhood psychology or adolescent development, or some other kind of like thematically related thing, but that doesn't actually talk about the short story. So any sources that show up in your essays that are not appropriate, right? They're not from a database, or not relevant, as in they don't actually discuss the primary text, are going to have a significant impact on your grade. And if you don't like that grade and come back and complain that it's unfair, I'm going to point you to minute like 8 in this video and say, well, what did you miss class that day? Right? It's sort of that cut and dried. So again, there's a lot of kind of like text about that here in the assignment, but it's actually very straightforward. So the assignment simply asks you to use one of our literature databases, so you're using an appropriate source, to find something about like Boys and Girls or Gorilla My Love or Araby, one of the short stories we're looking at, and just do a brief report on it. It doesn't need to be a huge long thing. It can be like a fairly well-developed paragraph. You're not evaluating the source about whether it's good or bad. It's just here's what the source had to say. Maybe it covered characters, maybe it covered theme, maybe plot, maybe all of that. Maybe it presented a particular kind of argument about like an interpretation, whatever it happens to be. Make sure you provide the title of the source, the database it came from, name the author. Usually we're given an author in database articles, but not always, honestly. And the original place of publication. So most things that we'll find in a database were actually printed in a journal or book or literary magazine or whatever it happens to be, but like a physical print source probably. And that'll be listed in the database entry itself, and you can find that. And then again, like it says here, the one paragraph summary. So pretty straightforward, right? Again, a lot of kind of description that leads up to it because it's really important that we get this right. But the assignment itself is actually pretty straightforward. It won't take you more than, like, if it takes you half an hour, I'd be surprised. Okay, and then we do have a reply part here, which is a little bit artificial in as much as what you're posting originally is not your opinion. Really, it's just like a kind of objective reporting. Here's the source I found, here's what it covers, that's pretty much it. So the response isn't going to be like, oh, I loved your ideas about so-and-so, since you're not really posting ideas about whatever it is. The response is simply going to be an elaboration of, does the source seem like it conforms to what we're going for? Is it appropriate, like from a database? Is it relevant? Does it actually talk about a particular short story? And have you included all of the stuff that's asked for here? So the posts are going to be not short necessarily, but they're not really going to be that kind of dialogue like we might have had about ideas in previous discussion boards, like the one on flight patterns, for example. And then there's a little piece here about effectively integrating sources into your writing. So how do you quote effectively, smoothly? You never just drop a quote as its own sentence in here. Again, if I see that in your essay, then it shows me that you're just not like reading this material, watching this video, not applying the concepts we've learned in class. All right. So Unit 6 is one of those kind of strange ones. It'll take you very little time to complete. Even doing the readings, you're probably looking at like a couple of hours at the most. But it's like really, really central to what we're trying to do in our course. So one of the major things I look for in your essays is effective, finding and then use of these secondary sources. Okay, which brings us to, right, our essay. So this unit is, in addition to having the essay assignment, actually does have a fair amount of material to work through. And it's all fairly straightforward, I would say. In other words, it starts with having you look at some sample essays. There's they actually kind of you view them in this special viewer thing. So there's the text of the essay, there's narration by me, there's little notes that pop up. So it's kind of like an immersive multimedia thing. And the essays that we'll look at here are not perfect by any means. There's 3 of them to look through. But they'll point you to particular things that, again, are maybe effective or need revision in those sample essays. And so that teaches you things to do or things not to do in the essay that you produce. So again, could you simply skip this folder, skip looking at these things, skip looking at this example, skip the example below? Well, you could. I mean, I don't have really any way to check that specifically, except when it comes time to write your essay and you make a whole bunch of mistakes that are actually pointed to in these samples, or don't do some of the things that we've talked about really need to be done, well, that's a pretty good clue to me that you haven't really looked at or spent enough time with, right, the material in the course. So you'll get feedback from me, certainly, but I'm not going to reteach stuff that's actually already in the course here. So you really do have to manage your time. Excuse me. Back to MLA, right? Everyone's favorite, I know. At least it's in video format, so a little less boring maybe. But it shows you how to build a works cited working from one of the databases. I actually build one in real time, right, in a Word document. So again, it's worth a lot of points as a sort of relative measure of the whole point value of the essay, but it's like presented to you kind of right here. It's free money, it's on the ground, you just got to pick it up. There's more reminders, there's handouts, there's everything you'd want, right? So that doing that works cited or citing sources in your essay, there's no mystery about it, hopefully. It's all just following examples that are already built into the course here. And then finally, right, everything's funnier when they do it in Lego. I don't know. A little piece from Indiana Jones about time management. Anyway, the assignment itself. Incorporating one secondary source, so one source you found from a database could in fact be the one you find for Unit 6, so that's all right. You're writing a short essay based on close reading of one literary work that we've done, so one of the short stories, and notice that I suggest against flight patterns here. So if I'm reading your essay and it's about flight patterns, I'm thinking, okay, did this person just totally not listen to the video? And I get that it's long, but still 15 minutes compared to sitting in a class, 50 minutes, or God, in the 5-week format, I think classes run, what, like 3.5, 4 hours long? So, yeesh. Okay. In a clear essay of 3 to 4 pages, so we're not talking about a 10-page research paper here. You got to be concise, you got to get to the point, you got to be succinct, all of the things that you could press everything into, right, 3 to 4 pages. Different options to choose from. Don't write on all 3, obviously, just choose one. The role of stereotypes, how setting is used, theme of change. There's like lots of overlap between these as a matter of fact, but try to pick out one of those kind of elements and think about it in terms of one of the short stories we've read. Incorporating the source, again, might be that one you used from Unit 6, but you're practicing all of the skills that we did as far as citing correctly, integrating quotations smoothly, and then, of course, building your works cited. You're not using general web material. This is like a guaranteed F almost, because it just shows that you're not participating in the course before doing the work. Let's see. Make sure that the source is relevant, so it's not just that tangentially related idea. It's actually a discussion of the primary text. Don't use the I voice. Just make your statements directly about the reading. Again, this is more a matter of precision and concision and being succinct than anything else. And really, this is kind of it sums it all up right here. What I'm looking for in your essay isn't some magical, mystical thing that's just idiosyncratic to me. It's simply, have you clearly worked through material in the course and can now apply it in the essay format? And again, we're not talking about a 10 or 20 page, right, thesis you're writing here. It's a very, very compressed assessment. It's 3 to 4 pages, double spaced, not including the works cited, but still. Once you develop at least 3 body paragraphs, provide quotation from the primary text, cite from your secondary source, you'll find that 3 to 4 pages, it's actually hard to stay that short rather than be that long. Okay, especially now as we get towards this major assignment, it's really important to be in touch with me if you have any questions or concerns. And I'm going to post something that goes with this announcement about plagiarism, and so you can look at that. It's just a still image, but I think you'll get the idea. All right, so be in touch if you have any questions, and I'll talk to everybody soon.